The glass walls of her containment unit reflected the harsh white lights of the facility. As Zara huddled in the corner, her knees pulled to her chest, her purple skin looked dull under the artificial lighting, a far cry from the vibrant hue it had. In the sunlight of her homeworld, Nexus, the alien girl with glowing yellow eyes, watched as humans in white coats walked past her cage day after day, studying her like she was nothing more than an interesting specimen. It had been 3 months since the first contact between Earth and Nexus. What should have been a historic peaceful meeting between civilizations turned into chaos when extremist factions from both sides opened fire. The diplomatic mission Zara had been part of as a junior engineer was decimated. Most of her companions were killed. She was one of the few captured alive. When the Galactic Human Alliance took control of the situation, they decided that the surviving Nexians would be distributed as contracted servants, a politically acceptable term for what was essentially slavery. The sound of footsteps pulled Zara from her thoughts. A tall man approached her cage, unlike the scientists who usually observed her. He wore casual clothes and had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. When he spoke to the guard nodded and walked toward her containment unit. Zara pressed herself further into the corner, her heart racing with fear. The glass door slid open with a hiss. "Come on out," the guard barked. "You have been purchased." The word made her stomach turn. She slowly stood up, her silver hair falling over her shoulders as she stepped forward with as much dignity as she could muster. The tall man watched her with an expression she could not quite read. "My name is Eric Mason," he said, his voice gentler than she expected. "I purchased your contract." Zara remained silent, following him out of the facility into the brightness of an Earth morning. The sunlight hurt her eyes after months under artificial lights. She blinked rapidly. Trying to adjust, Eric led her to a vehicle and opened the door for her. She hesitated before climbing in. "I know this must be frightening for you," Eric said as he started the vehicle. "But I promise you will be treated with respect in my home." Zara did not respond. She had learned that humans often lied. Their promises meant nothing. She would wait and observe and plan her escape if necessary. The vehicle moved through streets filled with structures and vehicles so different from those on her world. Through the window, she watched humans going about their lives unaware or uncaring that her people were being distributed as property. After 30 minutes of driving, they arrived at a modest house in a quiet neighborhood, outside the busy city, but not isolated. Eric parked the vehicle and led her inside. "This is your room." He showed her a small but clean bedroom with a real bed, not a cage. "Your bathroom is connected." He pointed to a door within the room. "There is a lock on your door that you control." He demonstrated how the lock worked, showing that it could only be engaged from inside the room. "I need someone to help around the house. Cooking, cleaning, organizing. I work long hours. But you are not a slave. You will be paid. And when your 5-year contract ends, you can choose to stay or go." Zara examined the room. A window looked out onto a small garden. The door had a lock she could control. It was more than she had expected, but she remained cautious. She nodded once to show she understood. "There are clothes in the dresser." Eric continued, "I had to estimate your size. The kitchen is stocked with food. I was told your people can eat most Earth foods, but let me know if you need anything special." He hesitated. "I will leave you to settle in. Take today to rest. Tomorrow we can discuss your duties." After he left, Zara explored the room, opening drawers and checking the bathroom. She was surprised to find toiletries similar to those used on her world. The clothes were simple but of good quality. She tested the lock on her door, pushing against it after engaging it. It held firm. The house was quiet. Eric had gone to another part, leaving her alone. Zara moved to the window. The garden outside was small but well-maintained with plants she did not recognize. The sky above was blue like on Nexus, but with only one sun. She could see a fence around the property, but it was not particularly high. If she needed to escape, it would not be difficult. That evening, Eric knocked on her door to announce that dinner was ready. She found him in the dining room setting out containers of food. "I ordered delivery." He explained, "I thought you might like to try different Earth foods to see what you prefer." They ate in silence. Zara, trying small portions of each dish. Some were too bland for her taste, others too sweet, but a spicy dish with vegetables and rice was pleasant. She observed Eric as they ate. He did not stare at her or make demanding comments. He seemed content with the silence. In the beginning, she spoke little, doing her chores silently. Eric had shown her how to operate the cleaning devices in the house, explained what foods needed to be prepared, and given her a schedule of when to do what. He worked as an engineer designing spacecraft components, something that surprised her. On her planet, she had studied propulsion systems before the war. Before capture, Zara found herself drawn to his work. Often, when he was not looking, she would glance at the papers he left on the dining table, designs and calculations that looked familiar, yet different from what she knew. Sometimes she noticed errors in his work, small miscalculations that could cause problems, but she said nothing. It was not her place to correct a human. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Eric caught her looking at his designs. "Do you understand these?" he asked. Setting down his drink, Zara hesitated, then nodded slightly. The combustion ratio is wrong here." She pointed, speaking softly. "Your fuel will burn too fast." Eric looked at where she was pointing, then back at her face with surprise. He picked up the paper, studying it carefully, then made some calculations of his own on a separate sheet. His eyebrows rose. "You're right," he said with wonder. "How did you know that I studied engineering on Nexus?" She admitted before the war I was in training to become a propulsion specialist. Eric studied her with new interest. "You never mentioned this. You never asked." She replied simply, "You purchased me to clean your house, not discuss engineering." Eric winced at her words. "I didn't purchase you. I purchased your contract. There is a difference, at least to me." Zara said nothing, but she noted how uncomfortable he seemed with the reality of her situation. Perhaps he had a conscience after all. The next morning, when she came out of her room, she found a data pad on the kitchen counter with a note. "Thought you might find this interesting. It has some books on Earth engineering. If you have questions, I'm happy to discuss." Zara picked up the pad cautiously, scrolling through the titles. They were advanced texts on propulsion systems, fuel mixtures, and spacecraft design. She glanced toward Eric's closed office door, wondering what game he was playing. As days passed into weeks, their routine began to shift subtly. Eric started leaving more of his work spread across the dining table. Zara found herself leaving small notes with corrections or suggestions. At first, she was tentative, afraid of angering him. But Eric never showed frustration with her input. Instead, he seemed impressed, often asking her to elaborate on her ideas. "You have remarkable insight," Eric said one evening after she solved a cooling problem that had stumped his team. "You think differently than humans. Do all your people understand engineering like this?" No, Zara answered, her English improving with daily practice. "I studied at the highest academy on Nexus. Only the most promising students were accepted." Eric nodded, thoughtfully watching her with those kind eyes that had begun to seem less threatening. "My team at work is struggling with a new propulsion system. Would you be willing to look at the designs? Would you like to?" The question surprised her. No. Human had asked what she would. "Like since she arrived on Earth, I would like to see them," she said carefully. The next day, Eric brought home more detailed plans. They spent the evening at the dining table discussing theories and possibilities. For the first time since her capture, Zara felt like a person again, not just property. 6 months into her stay at Eric's house, the doorbell rang while he was at work. Zara approached cautiously, peering through the window to see a stern-looking woman in a crisp uniform standing on the porch. The insignia on her shoulder marked her as an official from the Human Alliance, the organization that controlled all alien residents on Earth. Zara opened the door, her heart beating rapidly. "Hello," the woman said. "My name is Diane Watson. I am from the Alien Integration Department, here to conduct your mandatory wellness check." She held up an identification card. "May I come in?" Zara stepped aside, allowing the woman to enter, though every instinct told her to be wary. The woman looked around the house, noting the clean conditions before turning her attention back to Zara. "I need to speak with you privately," Diane said. Whereas your assigned human, Eric, is at work. Zara replied. He will not return until evening good. Diane nodded. That gives us time to talk honestly. She gestured to the living room. Shall we sit? Zara led her to the couch, feeling strange playing host in a house that was not hers. The woman pulled out a tablet and began asking questions. How many hours do you work each day? Are you given adequate food and rest? Do you have privacy? Is your sleeping space acceptable? The questions continued, covering every aspect of her living conditions. Zara answered truthfully, seeing no reason to lie. After the basic questions were completed, Diane leaned forward, her expression becoming more serious. Now I need to ask some sensitive questions, remember. Your answers are confidential. Is Eric Mason kind to you? He is fair, Zara replied. After considering the question, has he touched you inappropriately? The woman looked concerned. Zara shook her head. He barely touches me at all. The woman seemed relieved. That is good. You can tell me if anything changes. Has he asked you to perform duties outside your contract parameters? Zara thought about the engineering work she had been doing. I help with his work sometimes, engineering designs. Diane frowned. This was not in your assigned duties. Did he force you to do this work? No, Zara said quickly. I offered my knowledge. I was an engineer on my world. The woman made notes on her tablet. If you wish to file a formal request to modify your contract to include technical consultation, I can process that paperwork. It would increase your compensation substantially. Zara had not considered this possibility. Would that mean I belong to the Alliance rather than Eric? She asked carefully. No, Diane explained. Your residence contract would remain with Eric Mason, but your work contract would be expanded. You would remain here, but receive additional payment for any engineering work. Thought was appealing. Zara had begun to find satisfaction in working on the propulsion designs. It reminded her of her life before capture, before everything changed. I will consider it, she said. After Diane left, Zara thought about the conversation. The woman had assumed Eric might mistreat her, take advantage of her. That was what many humans did to the contracted aliens. Yet Eric had never been cruel. He respected her privacy, valued her knowledge, treated her more like a roommate than a servant. The realization was unsettling. It made it harder to think of all humans as enemies. That evening, when Eric returned, Zara told him about the visit. His reaction surprised her. Did she threaten you? He asked, looking concerned. Did she try to reassign? You know, Zara said. She offered to modify my contract to include engineering consultation. Eric nodded. That would be good for you. You would receive direct payment for your work, not just through me. He hesitated before adding, You know, I never wanted a servant. I needed a housekeeper, and the Alliance program seemed like a way to help someone have better conditions. Zara studied him, not sure if she believed him. Why did you choose me? Your file said you were an engineer. Eric admitted, I thought we might have something in common. I thought you might be less unhappy here than elsewhere. The honesty of his answer caught her off guard. She had not expected him to admit to any self-interest. She did not know how to respond, so she simply nodded and went to prepare dinner. Spring arrived, bringing warmer weather and longer days. Eric spent a weekend working in the backyard. When Zara looked out the window, she saw him building what appeared to be a raised garden box with fresh soil. The sight confused her. That evening over dinner, she asked about it. Is the garden box for growing food? Eric looked up from his plate. No, not exactly. I thought you might like to have your own garden, a place to grow plants of your choice. He seemed almost nervous. Is that okay? If you don't want it, I can remove it. Zara felt something warm spread through her chest at his consideration. She had mentioned once briefly that she missed the gardens of her home world. He had remembered, I would like a garden. She said softly, Next day, Eric took her to a plant nursery. There were strange looks from other customers as the purple-skinned alien walked the aisles examining earth plants. The shop owner, a middle-aged woman named Irene, was kinder than most, explaining the growing requirements of different species. Do any of these remind you of plants from your world? Irene asked. Zara shook her head. They are all very different. She hesitated before adding, I have seeds. Both Irene and Eric looked at her with surprise. Seeds, Eric repeated, from Nexus. How Zara touched her long silver hair. I hid them when I was captured. Small ones woven into my hair, others sewn into my clothing. I saved them. Irene clapped her hands together excitedly. Oh my, that is wonderful. What kind of growing conditions do they need? The conversation that followed was the longest Zara had engaged in since arriving on Earth. She described the soil composition, the light requirements, the watering needs of the various Nexian plants. Eric listened intently, asking questions about what additional supplies they would need. That afternoon, they prepared the garden box together, mixing special soil amendments that Irene had recommended, Eric working alongside Zara, their hands occasionally brushing against each other in the dirt. Zara noticed that he no longer pulled away from such accidental contact. The way he had in the beginning, when the soil was ready, Zara carefully retrieved her hidden seeds, some from a small pouch sewn into the hem of the clothes. She had arrived in others from a thin container disguised as a hair ornament. She held them in her purple palm, tiny specks of hope from a distant world. These are luma flowers, she explained, indicating the smallest seeds. They bloom at night and sing to the moons. These pointing to larger seeds are sweet vines. The fruit is like your honey but purple. Eric watched her face as she spoke about each plant. The animation in her usually guarded expression was new. Her yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. With enthusiasm, he smiled at her excitement. Zara caught his expression. What is amusing? Nothing, he said quickly. Just it's nice to see you happy. She had not thought about happiness in a long time. Survival had been her only concern. But as she looked at the seeds in her hand and the garden prepared for them, she realized that perhaps happiness was not impossible even here. The seeds were planted with care, Zara marking each section with small stones in patterns that meant something to her. The work was completed as the sun began to set. Eric brought glasses of cold water and they sat on the edge of the garden box, looking at their work. How long until they grow, he asked. Some will sprout within days, Zara said. Others may take weeks. The luma flowers are the quickest, but they need moonlight to bloom properly. I look forward to seeing them, Eric said. They sat in companionable silence, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Zara found herself studying Eric's profile in the fading light. He was not unattractive for a human. His features were balanced, his eyes kind. Something had shifted between them over the past months. A trust had begun to form, fragile but real. When Zara came out the next morning, she found Eric had installed small solar lights around the garden box. For when I'm not home, he explained. They charge during the day and light the garden at night. So your plants will grow even when I'm working late. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her. No one had considered her needs so carefully since she had been taken from her world. Thank you, she said, the words feeling insufficient. Eric smiled. That simple expression of gratitude seemed to please him more than any of the complex engineering solutions she had provided. As the seeds began to sprout, tiny green shoots pushing through the dark soil, Zara found herself spending more time in the garden. Each morning before beginning her household duties, she would check on their progress, carefully watering and tending the alien plants. Eric often joined her in the evenings, asking questions about each variety, listening as she explained their properties and uses on her world. The first luma flowers bloomed 3 weeks after planting, delicate blue petals, unfurling in the moonlight. When Eric came home that night, Zara was waiting by the door. They are blooming, she said with unusual excitement. You must come see. He followed her to the garden where the small blue flowers glowed with a soft luminescence. In the darkness, as they watched, the blooms began to vibrate, producing a gentle humming sound that rose and fell like distant voices singing. It's beautiful, Eric whispered, standing close to Zara in the darkness. They really do sing on my world. They sing to the moon, she told him. There were 3. Your single moon is beautiful but lonely like you, he said softly. Then looked embarrassed. I mean, I didn't meant to. It's true. Zara acknowledged. I am alone here. The last of my kind on your planet. Not completely. Alone, Eric said hesitantly. You're here with me, Zara looked at him, her yellow eyes reflecting the moonlight. She did not feel as alone as she once had. The realization was both comforting and frightening. 1 year after her arrival on Earth, Zara received her first payment as promised. A substantial sum deposited into an account Eric had helped her establish. It was strange to have money of her own to make decisions about what to purchase. The concept of ownership had become distant during her time as a captive. What will you buy? Eric asked when she told him about the notification she had received. Zara considered the question. I do not know, she admitted. What is appropriate? Eric laughed gently. There is no appropriate or inappropriate, it's your money. You can spend it on whatever you want. The next day he took her to a shopping center larger than any building she had seen since arriving on Earth. Stores filled with clothing, electronics, furniture, and countless other items overwhelmed her senses. Eric walked beside her patiently, waiting as she paused to examine things that caught her interest. When others stared at her purple skin and alien features, he stood closer, protectively. She noticed how he positioned himself between her and those whose looks seemed hostile. It made her feel secure in a way she had not expected, in a clothing store. Zara explored the different styles available, so different from the practical uniform she had been given by the Alliance or the basic clothes Eric had provided. When she hesitated to enter the fitting rooms, a sales associate approached. Can I help you? The woman asked, her gaze flicking nervously between Zara and Eric. My friend would like to try these clothes, Eric explained, emphasizing the word friend. The woman nodded and led Zara to a private room. Looking at herself in the mirror wearing Earth fashion was strange. The colors and cuts were foreign, but not unpleasant. She selected several items that appealed to her, simple designs and colors that complemented her purple skin. Eric waited patiently, never rushing, never making her feel that her choices needed his approval. They visited other stores throughout the day, Zara purchasing small items for her room decorations that reminded her of Nexian designs, a soft blanket in shades of blue and silver, a lamp that cast star-like patterns on the walls, books about Earth culture and history. By the end of the day, she felt different. Owning things changed her relationship to this world, gave her a sense of belonging she had not anticipated. That night, as she arranged her purchases in her room, Zara realized that she no longer thought of escape. The room had become hers, not just a place she was allowed to occupy. She had made choices about its appearance, selected items that pleased her. It was a strange feeling, this growing attachment to a place on a world not her own. The following week brought another change. Diane returned, this time with paperwork. Your request for contract modification has been approved, she informed Zara. You are now officially a technical consultant for the Human Alliance Engineering Division. Your compensation has been adjusted accordingly. She handed Zara a tablet showing the details. Zara had not submitted any request. She looked at Eric, who stood nearby. I put in the paperwork, he explained. The designs you've been helping with. Your ideas deserve recognition and compensation. Diane continued, you will report to the Alliance Engineering Office once a week to consult with their team. Your residence contract remains with Eric Mason. She glanced between them with a look Zara could not interpret. Is this arrangement acceptable to both of you? Yeah, they answered simultaneously. After Diane left, Eric showed Zara the project they would be working on officially. A new propulsion system for the next generation of Earth spacecraft. This could revolutionize space travel, he said, excitement evident in his voice. And you're officially part of the team now. Not just helping me at home, the propulsion system became their focus in the evenings, Zara bringing knowledge from Nexus, Eric contributing Earth engineering principles. Together they created something new, a hybrid of both worlds' technologies. The work was challenging but satisfying. Zara found herself looking forward to their evening sessions at the dining table. Heads bent over calculations and designs. Their conversations expanded beyond engineering to discussions of their respective worlds, cultures, and histories. Zara learned to cook Earth food, experimenting with flavors and techniques. Eric learned to eat the spicy Nexian cuisine she prepared using vegetables from their garden and spices she found at specialty stores. They worked side by side on engine designs, sometimes disagreeing but always respectfully. Their routine became comfortable, familiar. One evening, as they reviewed the latest test results from the Alliance lab, Eric received a communication from his supervisor. Zara could hear only his side of the conversation, but his expression grew increasingly troubled. "Yes. General Mason," he said. "Yes, I understand." But he glanced at Zara, then turned away, lowering his voice. When the call ended, Eric sat heavily on the couch, his face pale. "What is wrong?" Zara asked, sitting beside him. "The Alliance wants to run tests," he said slowly, "on Nexian biology, to better understand your species' reaction to different propellants tests." Zara felt cold fear spread through her. She knew what that meant. More Nexians in laboratories poked and prodded like specimens. She had escaped that fate, but others had not. "They specifically want you," he continued. "You have the engineering knowledge to understand what they're testing, and the biological characteristics they need to study." Zara stood abruptly, stepping away. "I am not available for testing. I am a person, not a specimen. No, she is not available for testing. General Mason, she is a person, not a specimen." Eric repeated the words she had just spoken, his voice firm. "Her engineering knowledge is freely given when she chooses to share it, but her body is her own." Zara stared at him, astonished. He was refusing a direct order from his superior, defending her right to choose. The conversation continued, Eric becoming increasingly frustrated. Finally, he ended the call and looked at Zara. "I told him no," he said simply. "If they want your expertise, they will have to accept it on your terms. No. Invasive. Testing." A warm feeling spread through her chest. Gratitude and something more. Something she was not yet ready to name. The Alliance did not give up easily. More calls came, more pressure. But Eric remained firm, and gradually they found a compromise. Zara would provide detailed information about Nexian biological responses to different environments based on her knowledge, but no physical testing would be conducted. Their work on the propulsion system continued. Progress was slow, but steady, their hybrid technology showing promise in simulations. Zara found satisfaction in the work in creating something that might one day connect her lost world with her new one. She began to imagine a future where Nexians and humans might travel together, among the stars, not as captors and captives but as equals, on the anniversary of her arrival, what Eric called her Earth birthday. He surprised her with a special dinner. He cooked himself following recipes she had taught him. The table was set with candles and flowers from their garden, including the singing luma blooms placed in a glass vase. "You remembered," she said, touched by the gesture. "Of course," Eric smiled. "It's been a year since you came here." He hesitated. "A difficult year in many ways, but I'm glad you're here." Zara looked at him across the table. The candlelight softened his features. "I did not expect to say this," she admitted, "but I too am glad after dinner." Eric gave her a small package wrapped in shimmering paper. She opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like the luma flower. "I had it made from a photograph of your garden," he explained. "It reminded me of you." Beautiful, unexpected, and unlike anything from Earth, Zara held the pendant, her fingers tracing the intricate design. No one had given her a gift since before her capture. The gesture overwhelmed her. "Thank you," she whispered. Eric helped her fasten the necklace, his fingers brushing against her neck. The contact sent an unexpected shiver through her. He stepped back quickly, as if sensing her reaction. Later that evening, they sat in the garden among the singing flowers. The night was warm, stars visible above through scattered clouds. Zara found herself studying Eric in the moonlight. The human, who had purchased her contract but never treated her as property. The man who defended her against his own people. She wondered what he saw when he looked at her. Was she still alien to him, still other, or had she become something more, as if sensing her thoughts? Eric turned to her. Their eyes met hers, glowing yellow in the darkness, his warm brown. In that moment, something shifted between them, an understanding that did not need words. The sound of an alert from inside the house broke the moment. Eric sighed and stood work. He said apologetically, "I need to check this," while he was gone. Zara remained in the garden, touching the silver pendant at her throat, contemplating how much had changed in a year. How much she had changed. The frightened captive who had arrived was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone beginning to believe in possibilities. When Eric returned, his expression was serious, his shoulders tense. "What is it?" she asked. "My contract with the Alliance ends next month," he said. "I will be relocated to the Mars colony." Zara felt a sudden coldness that had nothing to do with the night air. "But what about?" She could not finish the question. "Your contract will transfer to another household." He explained. Zara stood abruptly. No, the force of her response surprised them both. "I do not wish to serve another household," she said, her voice steady. "I will not." Eric ran a hand through his hair, looking distressed. "I don't want that either," he admitted, "but the Alliance controls alien residency. Without my contract, you'll be placed elsewhere." "It's protocol." Zara repeated the word with disdain. The same protocol that had made her property had separated her from her people. "What options do we have?" "Partnership." Zara repeated the word, uncertain of his meaning. "What kind of partnership?" Eric looked away, suddenly seeming nervous. "I need to research the possibilities. I don't want to suggest something that isn't viable." "Give me time to look into options." The following weeks were filled with tension. Eric spent long hours at the Alliance offices, returning late, with little explanation of his activities. Zara continued working on their propulsion system alone in the evenings, trying not to think about what would happen when Eric's contract ended, when she would be transferred to another household, another human who might not see her as a person. One evening, Eric came home with a determined expression. "Get dressed," he said. "We are going out." "Where?" Zara asked, confused by the sudden announcement to visit my neighbor Mary. "She invited us for dinner." Zara had met the older woman who lived next door several times. Mary had always been kind, treating Zara with the same neighborly respect she showed to humans. She had never seemed disturbed by Zara's purple skin or alien features. Mary welcomed them warmly into her home. The table was set for 3 with what appeared to be a special meal. "I hope you like lasagna," Mary said. "It's my mother's recipe." The conversation during dinner was pleasant. Mary asking about their work, the garden, their days. Zara found herself relaxing, enjoying the simple human ritual of sharing a meal. It was only when Mary served dessert that the conversation took an unexpected turn. "You two need to stop pretending," Mary said, setting a slice of cake in front of each of them. "Anyone can see you love each other. The laws changed last month. Interspecies marriages are legal." Now Eric choked on his drink. Zara's face flushed a deeper purple marriage. She had heard the term, knew it was a human bonding ritual, but she had never considered, "I don't know what you're talking about." Eric stammered, his face reddening. Mary laughed. "Oh, please. I've watched you two in that garden of yours, the way you look at each other when you think no one is watching." She turned to Zara. "You know he fought for that law?" Changed. Zara looked at Eric in surprise. "Is this true?" Eric nodded reluctantly. "I joined an advocacy group after you arrived," he admitted. "We pushed for legal recognition of interspecies relationships. It wasn't just for us. For all the aliens who have formed connections with humans. For us." Zara's heart raced at the implication. Mary stood collecting empty plates. "I'll give you two a moment to talk," she said, disappearing into the kitchen. Eric turned to Zara, his expression serious. "The partnership I mentioned. This is what I was researching. Marriage would give you legal status. Separate from the service contract, you would be recognized as a person with rights, not property." Zara tried to process this information. A legal bond with Eric, a human, a former owner becoming a partner. It was overwhelming. Would this be a true partnership? She asked carefully. Or a different form of contract, Eric? reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching hers. "It would be whatever we wanted it to be," he said softly. "I never saw you as a servant," he said. "Not after the first week." Zara took his hand, her purple fingers intertwining with his pink ones. "I know." The walk home that night was quiet, both lost in thought. The stars above seemed brighter somehow, the singing flowers in their garden louder than ever before. As they reached the porch, Eric stopped, turning to face her. "This doesn't have to happen," he said. "I would never pressure you. We can find another solution." Zara studied his face in the moonlight, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, the concern. "I need time to think," she said. "Of course," Eric nodded. "Take all the time you need." In her room that night, Zara contemplated the strange turn her life had taken. Captured during a diplomatic mission, sold into servitude, only to find herself considering marriage to a human. The concept was foreign, yet not unwelcome. She touched the silver pendant at her throat, thinking about all the ways Eric had shown respect and kindness, how he had defended her rights, advocated for her freedom, given her choices. She wondered what a future with him might look like. The next morning she found Eric in the kitchen preparing breakfast. She sat at the table watching him work, her decision made. "If we were to marry," she began, "what would change?" Eric turned to face her. "Everything and nothing," he said. "Your legal status would change. You would be free to stay or go as you choose. No more service contract." But he hesitated. "Our daily life could remain the same if that's what you want. And if it's not what I want?" Zara asked. "Then we adjust." Eric said, "Simply tell me what you need. What you want. I will listen." Zara nodded, considering his words. "What do you want?" she asked. Eric sat across from her, his expression open. "I want you to be happy," he said. "I want you to have freedom, choice, a life that fulfills you." He paused, then added more softly, "And I want to be part of that life if you'll let me." In the garden that evening, among the singing flowers, Eric knelt before Zara, a small box in his hand. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful, with a stone that caught the moonlight and reflected it in patterns that reminded her of Nexus skies. "I never planned this," he said. "Never expected to feel this way. But somewhere between engineering problems and alien flowers, I fell in love with you. Will you marry me? Not for legal status, though that comes with it, but because we choose each other." Zara looked at the ring, at Eric, at the garden they had built together. A home created from nothing on a world not her own, with a man not her kind. Yet it felt right, a connection that transcended differences. "Yes," she said, the word both strange and natural on her tongue. "I choose you." The preparations for their wedding were complicated. The first legal marriage between a human and a Nexian required special permissions, documentation, and approval from multiple alliance departments. Eric handled the bureaucracy, patiently working through each obstacle. Catherine, Eric's mother, arrived 3 days before the ceremony, a small woman with the same kind eyes as her son. She embraced Zara without hesitation. "I've heard so much about you," she said. "I'm so happy to finally meet the woman who captured my son's heart." Nexus tradition required the bride to paint her chosen mate with sacred symbols the night before the bonding ceremony. Zara had never performed the ritual but remembered watching her older sister prepare for her bonding. The meaning of each symbol, the pattern they created together, telling the story of the couple. Eric sat still as Zara traced silver patterns across his face with trembling fingers, connecting the dots that represented stars, marking the paths that had brought them together. The symbols for strength, protection, and growth curving around his eyes. The patterns for wisdom and patience across his forehead, along his jaw, the marks of loyalty and truth. On the morning of the wedding, a small gathering assembled in the garden. Mary from next door, Catherine, various friends from Eric's work, a judge authorized to perform interspecies marriages, waited beneath an arch covered in luma flowers and earth roses. Zara wore a simple dress of flowing silver fabric that complemented her purple skin, her hair adorned with tiny luma blooms. Eric stood waiting for her, the silver symbols still visible on his face. The sunlight caught the pendant at her throat as she walked toward him. The ceremony combined traditions from both worlds. Vows spoken in both languages, promises of partnership, respect and love. The judge pronounced them, bonded legally recognized as partners equal under Earth law. As Eric leaned in to kiss her a human tradition she had learned, the Luma flowers burst into song. The Alliance officials who attended frowned throughout the ceremony, their disapproval evident, but the law protected the union. And when Eric and Zara signed the final documents, her service contract was officially terminated, replaced by a marriage certificate. After the ceremony, as guests celebrated with food and music, Zara stood slightly apart, watching the humans who had come to witness this unprecedented union. She felt a presence beside her and turned to find Diane Watson, the Alliance official who had checked on her welfare. "I never expected this outcome," Diane said, her usual stern expression softened. "When I first visited you, I worried you were being mistreated. Now you've made history," she offered a small smile. "I wish you happiness." That night, after the guest had left, Eric and Zara sat in their garden beneath the stars, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. The Luma flowers singing softly in the moonlight. "Are you happy?" Eric asked. Zara considered the question. It was still strange to think in terms of happiness after so much loss, so much change. But looking at their home, at the man beside her, she felt a sense of peace, of rightness. "Yes," she answered. "I am happy. Here with you." Eric kissed her forehead gently. "What happens now?" "Now we continue our work," Zara said. "The propulsion system, the garden, our life." She looked up at the stars visible through Earth atmosphere, so different from the night sky of Nexus, yet beautiful in their own way. She wondered if somewhere among those distant lights her people looked back. If they remembered those lost during the failed first contact, if they still hoped for peace one day, she whispered. "Perhaps we can use our work to build bridges between your world and mine, not through force but through understanding." Eric nodded. "We already have," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "We already have." 3 years into their marriage, Zara and Eric had settled into a life that bridged two worlds. Their home expanded to include a larger garden filled with plants from both Earth and Nexus. Their work on the hybrid propulsion system had progressed, from theoretical designs to practical application, with successful test flights of small unmanned vessels. The Alliance had reluctantly recognized the value of their collaboration, offering them a dedicated laboratory and a team of engineers to assist in development. The morning began like any other, Zara preparing breakfast while Eric reviewed the latest test results. The quiet domestic scene interrupted by an urgent alert from the Alliance communication system. Eric activated the screen, revealing the stern face of General Howard, the military leader, who had once demanded biological tests on Zara Mason. "We have a situation," the general said without preamble. "We have detected an unidentified vessel approaching Earth orbit. Initial scans suggest Nexian design." Zara froze the spatula in her hand, dropping to the floor with a clatter. "Nexian, a ship from her world." "After nearly 4 years of silence, are they responding to communication attempts?" Eric asked, moving closer to the screen. "Negative," General Howard replied. "They are maintaining radio silence, but their trajectory suggests deliberate approach, not accident. We are scrambling defensive systems." "No," Zara stepped into view of the camera. "Let me try to communicate with them." The general frowned at her appearance. Howard had never approved of the marriage, never fully accepted Zara as anything more than a useful asset. "We have standard first contact protocols. They failed last time," Zara reminded him. "That is why I am here." Her voice remained calm but firm. "I know Nexian communication systems. I can reach them." A tense silence followed before the general nodded reluctantly. "Very well. Report to Alliance headquarters immediately. Both of you." The journey to headquarters was conducted in silence, Zara lost in thoughts of her homeworld, the people she had left behind. The possibility of seeing her own kind again, after years of isolation, both thrilled and terrified her. What if they had come seeking vengeance for the failed first contact? What if they demanded her return? The Alliance headquarters buzzed with activity when they arrived, military personnel rushing through corridors, alarm systems flashing silently on monitors. Eric kept close to Zara as they were escorted to the command center. The large room filled with screens and control panels overlooked Earth orbit, where a sleek silver vessel now hovered. Its design unmistakably Nexian. General Howard approached them flanked by armed guards. "I hope you understand the gravity of this situation," he said, addressing Zara. "If this is an invasion force, it is not." Zara interrupted, studying the ship design on the main screen. "That is a diplomatic vessel, not a warship." "How can you be certain?" the general demanded. "The configuration." Zara pointed to specific features, the marking pattern on the hull. "Those indicate diplomatic registry, not military." "Let me establish contact," she urged. After consultation with other officials, the general reluctantly agreed. Zara was given access to a communication console. She input codes from memory sequences that identified official channels, her fingers trembling slightly as she composed a message in her native language, identifying herself, requesting peaceful dialogue. Minutes passed in Noe. Tense silence. Then a response appeared on the screen. Nexian characters flowing across the display. Zara read quickly, her expression changing from concern to surprise. "They have come for me," she said softly. Eric's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "What do you mean?" "They detected the propulsion system tests," Zara explained. "The technology signature was recognizable as partially Nexian. They traced it to Earth. Our work brought them here." She looked at Eric. "Our partnership brought them here." The message continued, scrolling, Zara translating for the assembled officials. "They request a meeting. A renewal of diplomatic relations. They..." She paused, her voice catching. "They have brought delegates from my academic clan." My family. Eric stood protectively closer. "They can't take you back," he said. "You are a citizen now. Your contract is void." Zara placed a hand on his arm. "They are not demanding my return. They are requesting dialogue. The message was initiated by my sister Kyla. She believed I survived, has been searching." The room erupted in discussion. Military officials arguing about security protocols. Diplomatic corps debating proper response. Alliance leadership weighing risks. Through it all, Zara remained focused on the screen, on the words from her homeworld, a connection she had thought lost forever. Eventually, a decision was reached. A delegation would be permitted to shuttle down to a secure Alliance facility. Zara and Eric would be present as intermediaries. The meeting was scheduled for the following day, allowing time for security preparations and translation services. That night in their home, Zara stood before the mirror, studying her reflection. The purple skin that had made her so obviously alien on Earth would now be normal. Among her people, the yellow eyes that humans found unsettling would be unremarkable. She touched the silver pendant at her throat, a symbol of her life here, of the connections she had formed. "What are you thinking?" Eric asked, watching her from the doorway. "About belonging," she answered honestly. "On Earth I am alien, always different, always other. Tomorrow I will be among my kind, normal." But she turned to face him. "I have built a life here with you. I am not the same person who left." Nexus. Eric crossed the room, taking her hands. "I know you'll want to reconnect with your family," he said. "Your sister. Anyone would." She could see the fear in his eyes, the unasked question. "Will you leave?" Zara touched his face, tracing the places where the bonding symbols had once been painted, her fingers following the patterns now invisible but permanently etched in her memory. "My home is here," she said simply. "With you." The relief in his expression was immediate. "But you should have the chance to see your people, to reconnect." "I will," she agreed. But as an ambassador, not as a returning exile. The secure facility had been transformed overnight. Nexian atmospheric conditions replicated as closely as possible, lighting adjusted to the spectrum most comfortable for. The visitor security remained high but less visibly aggressive. Zara and Eric waited in the reception area, She dressed in formal Nexian attire preserved from her arrival on Earth. He in his Alliance uniform, modified to include symbols of their joint propulsion project. The shuttle landing was broadcast on monitors throughout the facility, the elegant craft touching down with barely a sound. The delegation emerging 7 Nexians in ceremonial robes, their purple skin ranging from deep violet to pale lavender. Their silver hair elaborately styled to indicate rank, and Clan Zara recognized her sister immediately. Kyla taller, more assured than Zara remembered, but with the same determined expression, she stepped forward as the delegation approached. "Welcome to Earth," Zara said in her native language. The words feeling strange after years of speaking primarily English. Kyla stopped several paces away, her yellow eyes widening with recognition. "Sister," she whispered. Then, formality forgotten, she rushed forward, embracing Zara tightly. "I knew you lived," Kyla said, her voice thick with emotion. "I traced the engineering signature. I knew it had to be you." The sisters clung to each other as the other delegates watched, some with approval, others with concern. Eventually they separated, Kyla looking past Zara to where Eric stood. "Is this?" he began. "My husband," Zara confirmed, "Eric Mason." Kyla studied him with open curiosity. "A human husband," she said. This was unexpected. The formal introductions proceeded, Alliance officials greeting the Nexian delegation with careful diplomacy, General Howard maintaining a suspicious distance, Eric standing proudly beside Zara as she translated, facilitating the first peaceful exchange between their worlds since the disastrous first contact. During a break in the formal proceedings, Zara and her sister found a moment of privacy. "We thought you dead," Kyla said. "Then rumors came of survivors taken as servants." She shook her head. "When I detected the propulsion signature, I knew it must be you." No one else combined Nexian flow principles with tachyon acceleration in quite that way. Zara smiled. Despite everything, her sister still knew her through her work. "Your husband," Kyla continued. "He treats you well, with respect and love." Zara answered honestly. "He purchased my contract to save me from laboratories, then fought for my rights, for my freedom. And now you build ships together," Kyla said with a hint of amusement. "You always did find engineering more romantic than poetry." The negotiations continued for days. The Nexian delegation touring Alliance facilities, meeting with Earth leaders, discussing possible trade, scientific exchange, and diplomatic relations. The tragic first contact acknowledged mistakes. On both sides admitted reparations discussed through it all. Zara and Eric served as bridges between worlds. Their marriage, once viewed with suspicion by both species, now held up as an example of what might be possible. Their propulsion system, the eye, physical manifestation of cooperation. The tangible benefit of combined knowledge. On the final day of the delegation visit, Kyla took Zara aside. "The Council offers you a position," she said, "official ambassador to Earth. You would maintain your life here but serve as our voice. Return to Nexus for consultation twice." Yearly, Zara looked to where Eric stood deep in conversation with one of the Nexian engineers, the two of them sketching designs on a shared tablet. He looked up, catching her eye, smiling warmly. "I accept," she told her sister. Later they walked together in their garden, the Luma flowers singing in the twilight. Eric listened as Zara explained the ambassadorial offer.